Greetings and blessings, everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Illumination podcast from bluestarspiritualgroup Collective. Today, this is episode 3, and we thought that we'd start communicating more about the process of awakening, as it were. And part of that has to do with what happens before we incarnate. Now, I relayed a story in our book, The Final Incarnation, about preparing to incarnate on Earth, this last incarnation. But basically, what we have a situation of is there are those who would be classified as advisors who are there to assist you. And then all decisions relating to the incarnation is made by the individual who's incarnating. Now, generally speaking, there are 3 options for parents. Now, normally this is 3 options in the same country. So for myself, I know that my options were California, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Portland, Maine. Now, I wanted to relay a story of something that just happened this last Monday. I had to go to the doctor. And as my wife and I were sitting there, and I was waiting to be called by the doctor, a young lady and her partner came in, and she was massively pregnant. I would say she was within weeks of delivery. Now, Janice and I are fairly tuned in on who's starseed, who's not a starseed, things of this nature. And what we noticed was that the soon-to-be mother was definitely a starseed. Her partner was a starseed as well. However, the important member, if you will, for that child wasn't the father, it was the mother. Now, with me, I grew up with my grandparents, my mother and my sister. My mother and my father, although their DNA was something that would be beneficial to me, that's not why I chose to be born into that family. I chose to be born into that family because of my grandmother. Sometimes it can be both parents. Sometimes it can be neither one of the parents, but someone else within the family, or the reason why we choose a particular family. What are your thoughts about this, Chris?
It's interesting because I just sort of never really thought about why I was born into the family that I was born into. And it never ever concerned me. I was just born into that family, although I never felt that I really fitted. I spent
That's a common feeling among starseed. I never felt like I was part of my family either.
And I spent a lot of my holidays with my grandparents, my father's parents, a lot of time with them. In fact, every single school holidays I spent with my grandparents. And so I had a very strong relationship with my grandparents. When I got older, I realized that whilst I didn't feel as if I really belonged in my family, my immediate family, I realized too that there was a disconnect between me and my wider family. And it's really only in the last 10 to 15 years that I've ever wondered why there was such a disconnect and have explored that a little more. But in saying that, and you were talking about this young couple that was in the waiting room at your doctor's practice, about how the mother is important to the child that's about to be born, I subsequently found out that the person who was in my family and the reason why I chose the family to be born into was not either one of my parents, but my grandfather. He was the linchpin, if you like, of the entire family. He was the foundation for the family. He was the one who was the heart of the family, I suppose. And I can see now, looking back on that, reflecting back on my life as a child and growing up, why I would have chosen that particular family. Because he was the one who was the strength. He was the rock, if you like, the spiritual rock of the family, and everything stemmed from him. It's not to say that he directed everything, because he didn't. He was an extremely quiet man. But he had a steady presence that everybody respected. And people went to him for advice. And so, whilst I wasn't aware of us actually making these choices, reflecting back on it, I can understand why that was the family I chose. Now, I have no idea what the other choices were. And quite frankly, for me, that is beside the point now, because that was the family I chose, and that was where I chose.
Actually, the thing that surprised me the most is I had this strong desire. I always had it when I was growing up without realizing why. But I always wanted to go to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I always wanted to go to Portland, Maine. And then when I found out, then in 1980, would have been early 1986, or the latter part of 86, a job opportunity came up through work. I worked for the airlines for a ticket counter position in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And although I applied for it, I didn't get it. But it made sense later on, because it's like I realized I wasn't meant to go there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the choice that I had made. Why would I have chosen? Why was my grandmother so important? She was the one reason why I survived growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, is it really overly important to know these things or to understand these things? Not necessarily. But my point to it all is we are the architects of our incarnation.
Mm-hmm.
So once it has been determined, that gets written into the DNA as well as into the heart center. Now, I've heard of many what I would term New Age or spiritual people who proclaim that their incarnation is a life contract and they can change that contract as they wish. But that's not actually true, because the choices that are made for an incarnation are made for specific reasons, along with the experiences that we choose to have. Sometimes they are experiences that we choose for ourselves because we're balancing energies or we're providing assistance to somebody else or whatever the case may be. Sometimes a being, a higher dimensional being, will come to us and ask us to experience something or to go through something for a different reason, for a higher reason. The case in point is my stroke. I was spoken to before I incarnated and talked to about going through this stroke and everything to do with it before I ever incarnated. So this determines our pathway. Now, the other aspect is invariably there is something, either something or some things that we are meant to do during our incarnation as starseed. And so many people try and figure it out what it is they need to do so that they can complete that and leave. But where trust and faith comes in is to have trust and faith that what needs to happen will happen at the divine moment it needs to happen. It doesn't matter if you live to be 50 or 100. And it doesn't matter when it happens. You will accomplish what you're here to do no matter what. All you have to do is be willing to trust that it will happen when it needs to. And even though you may never know what it was that you needed to do, by the time you cross over for the final time, you'll know exactly what it is you were meant to do and that it was accomplished and so on and so forth.
Interesting you should say that, because I know that you've said many times that reflection is an amazing tool.
Correct.
And when I've done this, when I've looked at my life, I can see junctions where there has been a point where a choice has been made by me that has provided me either with an experience or an interaction with someone, something of significance. And so when you think back and realize that we have planned our life path, our journey, in conjunction with advice, but we were the final, we gave the final tick, I suppose. So yes, this is what I agree to. I will do this. I will experience this. I will go through this experience. I will meet these people. If you reflect back on your life, you can see where there's these junction points where something occurred. And then if you think a little deeper about it, you understand or see what it was that influenced you to make that decision. So you were choosing, and it might be that you were choosing with guidance, but that it was a heart-based decision for you to make that choice. And I do that periodically where I look back on my life at a certain situation. And as I do that and sit with it, a little bit more understanding comes through and realization of why I made that choice. And it's only through looking back you understand the significance of that choice. But as you say, it's that trust and faith that you've had that has actually allowed you to listen or feel that guidance for you to make a heart-based choice at that time. And so you continue on your journey.
Well, it always seems to go back to the same thing, the same core issue, trust and faith.
Mm.
You know, reflection is the greatest tool I ever discovered. Now, I went through, when I was 6 years old, I was in grade 1, first grade. And when I finished that year and we went into the summertime, it was that summer that my mom left for 2 weeks. When she came back, she was remarried to a guy named Weldon Goodbread. I know, kind of a weird surname, but it is what it is. Now, for the next 3.5 years, I was physically, emotionally, and mentally abused by Weldon. He was an alcoholic. But something happened 6 months after my mom left him that changed me in a multitude of different ways and ended up becoming a foundation for me to understand more of who I really was. I'm not sure the logistics of it, but Weldon, after my mom and him split up, he moved back into the same house with friends of his that he was living in when my mom and him first got married. His house was 2 blocks from my primary school. And about 6 months after they had split up, I was walking home from school and I stopped on the corner and I just looked down the street towards where the house was. I never went back to the house. I never saw him again, nothing like that. But after standing there for about 10 minutes, I said, I forgive you, it's over with. But it was a forgiveness that was completely complete.
Mm.
And then I realized upon reflection many years later that the reason I went through that abuse with Weldon, there wasn't anything between he and I that needed to be balanced. He actually had something with someone else that he tried on 4 different occasions, 4 different lifetimes to balance, and it never worked out. And so I went through this process with him to allow him to balance this energy and finally be able to move forward with his incarnations and his life experience and things of this nature. So basically, I gave him a gift. But also, upon reflection, it can be amazing information you discover. It can also be very troubling information you discover. In this same scenario with Weldon, I'll give you one other reflection point that I discovered. My mom, when she decided to leave Weldon and divorce him, she did not do that to protect me. She did not do that because I was having the shit beat out of me and being abused and stuff like this. Now, the last Christmas that we were together, I got this really big box for Christmas. I'm like a 9-year-old kid. I'm assuming that it's like a swing set or something like that. And it's like it turned out to be a barbell set. And then he made a very disparaging comment saying that I was fat and that I had to work out on that every day. He never showed me how to use it, of course, and that I had to run around the trailer park every day. So one day, my mom was at work, Weldon was gone, and Terry and I was at home alone. But she was playing croquet out in the yard with some friends of hers, and I had been playing around with this barbell set. And Weldon finally came home and said to put everything away. So we did, and we went inside and we had dinner. After dinner, Weldon went into the lounge room and was drinking a beer, watching TV. My sister and I are doing the dishes. My sister turns to me and says, "We've only got a couple of pots left." She goes, "Go in and have your shower so that we can sit down and watch TV afterwards." And I'm like, "All right, no problem." So I go in, I'm in the shower, nude, of course, because I'm having a shower. Weldon comes bursting in and starts wailing on me with a belt because I didn't run around the trailer park. But my sister came to the door of the bathroom and yelled no, and Weldon turned and slapped her. That's why my mom left him. Not for what was happening to me, but because he slapped Terry. Now, some people would say that would really screw you up, that would really mess you up. And it did for a long time. But it's like once you get understanding and awareness, you can move beyond those things. I did a great service for Weldon. I have no animosity towards him whatsoever. I made peace with my mother. I have no animosity towards her either. She had a very difficult life. She led a very difficult incarnation. Imagine, if you will, getting married at the age of 21, leaving university, not finishing university, and you get married. You're so in love with this guy, and you move from Washington State to California. You're living your life, and then you discover that the man that you married isn't straight, he's gay. That's what my mom discovered. So my mom went through a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of things that I discovered well after she had passed away that made put the pieces of the puzzle together. But you see, one thing that for me that's so important, that what I've gone through in my life, which is a lot, I set up for myself. I don't blame anyone. It's like I did some of the things that I've gone through, like this stroke. I know a little bit about why I had to go through the stroke, but only a little bit. But most of it I don't know consciously here. But one thing that I've discovered when I had this stroke is just how deep my trust and faith is. The thing that I want to impress upon people in episode 3 of our podcast is the fact that you may not have all the answers. And one of the things that came up in our Armais group was the human curiosity.
Mm.
You know that bug? That can drive you insane sometimes.
Mm.
But the more trust and faith you have,
Mm.
the easier life becomes, because you begin to realize you don't have to control anything.
Mm. And also that with that trust and faith, you understand that there's a reason for absolutely everything. That you've written your life path, and that there are going to be junctures in your life where you make a choice. And things happen so that you are guided to make the choice that brings you forward on your path. And when you are doing that and things unfold as you have designed on your life path, whether you realize it or not, that doesn't matter. But as things are going along and you have that trust and you have that faith that everything is happening for a reason, and this is what is supposed to happen. I heard the other day a description of what that feeling is. Sports people call it the sweet spot. When somebody's playing golf, it's where you hit that ball with a club in exactly the perfect place to get the best possible shot. The same thing in tennis when you're playing.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what to make the perfect shot. So that trust and faith, as it settles within us, it is the sweet spot for us. It settles, it embeds, and we know that feeling. So it's that feeling of the sweet spot that actually carries us forward. It gives us that degree of comfort. It gives us that understanding, and it's more of a feeling than anything else that we are on our path. We are going in the right direction. There's no chatter from the mind that's going about fear, 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 fear. What will people think? What will they say? It's that sweet spot. It gives us that strength, and it gives us that stability and that harmony and that serenity to actually
When you're in the right place at the right moment, you are so right. That is a sweet spot. But trust and faith has to be tempered with discernment.
Yes, yes.
Does it resonate? Now, one of the things, the best thing that anyone can do is to discern everything. Because it's like, my philosophy is very simple. Everything that I do, from cooking to going to the doctor, driving, no matter what we do, to me, everything is spiritual. So I discern everything. Does it resonate? Yes or no? Yeah, some people would say, well, how do you know if it resonates? How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel right? Does it make you feel off? Does it inspire you? Does it cause you to be angry or upset? Things of this nature. So how does it make you feel? Discernment is very important, but the only way to make it through an incarnation on this planet is by having and utilizing trust and faith. Otherwise, we become too overwhelmed.
Yes, yes.
And for many people, if they don't feel that they're in control, they feel that something is wrong.
Yes.
And sometimes the best thing you can do on a spiritual pathway on this planet is to fully let go of control. Anyway, that's
Mm.
our discussion for today.
Mm.
This is Chris Marshall, and I'm James Thomas from the Blue Star Armais Collective.
Mm.
And this has been episode 3 of the Spiritual Illumination. And in the next day or two, there'll be a new channeling from Phineas.
Mm.
And we will just continue from there. Much love and many blessings. Oshata karata moite, shonya karata mayeta rata moto.